they make this massive gold discovery, biggest ever or whatever, $85 billion worth of gold or something along those lines. I think that was the number. The world's largest gold deposit worth over 80 billion, and it hasn't been verified yet. So I'm thinking, how do the Chinese say, oh, we've been lying all this time, we got all this gold? Well, maybe you claim that you found the biggest deposit on the planet Earth and you're going to exploit it. And guess what? 2 years from now, yeah, we actually have 40,000 metric tons, not the 2,600 that were conspiracy. In reality, maybe they really did find it, which will only mean they have that much more. But I do believe that they are probably the largest holders of gold and silver in the world.
China's official gold reserves have been a focal point for analysts and experts, especially given the country's strategic accumulation of the precious metal. As of November 2024, the People's Bank of China, PBOC, reported holdings of 72.96 million fine troy ounces, equivalent to approximately 2,268 metric tons, the sixth largest in the world. However, analysts believe the actual holdings are significantly higher, and their estimates range from between 5,000 metric tons to up to 40,000 metric tons. Nieuwenhuijs, a noted expert in Chinese gold markets, estimates that China's central bank may hold over 5,000 tons of gold. This discrepancy is attributed to unreported purchases and the country's opaque reporting practices. Prominent precious metals analyst Alasdair MacLeod believes China's actual gold reserves are way higher, ranging from 27,000 to 40,000 metric tons. MacLeod's analysis is based on several factors. 1. China has strategically acquired gold since the 1980s, often taking advantage of periods when global prices were low. Additionally, China is the world's largest gold producer and has maintained strict controls to ensure that domestically mined gold remains within the country. Substantial gold imports have also been directed to state reserves and private holdings. The Chinese government has promoted private gold ownership, leading to significant accumulation among citizens. MacLeod suggests that in a financial crisis, the state could potentially mobilize these private holdings to support the national economy. Popular bullion dealer Andy Schectman agrees with MacLeod's analysis and argues that China's substantial gold reserves position it to potentially introduce a gold-backed currency, which could challenge the dominance of the US dollar in global trade. Schectman believes China is slowly biding its time, awaiting the best moment to spring this surprise on the rest of the world by declaring its actual gold reserves and a new, gold-backed monetary system in one fell swoop. The Miles Franklin president believes the moment is almost upon us and highlights recent events that suggest that we are very close to this all-at-once moment. As we share clips from Andy Schectman's recent discussion with Capital Cosm, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted whenever we post new content. Thanks for your support and enjoy the video.
Since I was, 25 years old, I've been doing this since I was 20, I was aware of the Chinese gold position. Largest producer in the world, second largest producer of silver in the world, but their numbers never changed. And everyone would always say, you can't believe the numbers that China is putting out because their numbers stayed at 1,200 or so metric tons forever. Never got updated. My friend Bill Holter will tell you that they mine between 300 and 500 metric tons a year and have been for 25 years. That alone would put them at, upwards ends of 12 million metric tons and, 12 million. I'm having a hard time with math today. So it'll be 12,000 metric tons is what I'm trying to say. And we supposedly have 8,300 metric tons. Okay, that's more like it. So that would put them, just from what they mine themselves, a third more than we supposedly have. And that doesn't take into account that they're the largest importer in the world. So they're the largest producer and the largest importer. Reiterated that China's flying around the world, going to the gold and silver miners and disintermediating the marketplace, buying the doré and the concentrate, unrefined doré bars, which would be the bars that the miners will crudely fashion together that are maybe 50, 60% pure. They take those bars and the concentrate, which is a byproduct like sludge of their mining, and they ship it back to China for further refining. It completely disintermediates the marketplace and is very opaque in how much they're getting. It doesn't affect the price. and they're draining the world's exchanges every way they can. So, you know, their numbers are way higher than we are led to believe. And Alistair McLeod says, you know, they have 38,000 metric tons. This was 3, 4 years, 2 years ago. He said that at least. It's probably much higher right now. That would be 5 times more than we supposedly have. And again, when you talk about countries not wanting to, you know, pull back the veil, it's because if we do move to a system that is tied to gold, and I do believe ultimately we will. I mean, the BRICS system that they're talking about, the unit settlement currency that was slightly derailed because of the Enbridge fiasco with the Bank of International Settlements, is 40% gold. According to Dilma Rousseff, the former president of Brazil and the head of the New Development Bank. Switzerland, when they used to have a gold standard, it was 40% pegged. And so I think that that's probably a good number. And if we were going to do that, you make this massive gold discovery, biggest ever or whatever, $85 billion worth of gold or something along those lines. I think that was the number. The world's largest gold deposit worth over 80 billion. And it hasn't been verified yet. So I'm thinking, how do the Chinese say, oh, we've been lying all this time, we got all this gold? Well, maybe you claim that you found the biggest deposit on the planet Earth and you're going to exploit it. And guess what? 2 years from now, yeah, we actually have 40,000 metric tons, not the 2,600 that we're claiming, because it all came from this massive, ever-expanding gold find that we found within our own borders. And you know, again, fine line between conspiracy and reality. Maybe they really did find it, which will only mean they have that much more. But I do believe that they are probably the largest holders of gold and silver in the world. And they're already and David Morgan will tell you that they tell him, the mining folks in China, that they're the largest producer of silver in the world, not the second largest. Everyone thinks of Mexico and Peru. Well, don't forget China. And they've also gone from net exporter to net importer. So I think it's important to understand that things aren't always as they seem, whether it be talking about the war in Iraq or the war in Ukraine, whether it be talking about the gold holdings of the United States, which haven't been audited since '53, or the gold holdings of China, which everyone believes is a lie, and they own way, way more than they say. All of these things at these really high levels are misdirected. You know, the art of war. It's the no-look pass in basketball. It's you know, that book, by the way, is taught in every major business school just about in the world on corporate hierarchy and on formulating arguments in most major law schools. It's mandatory reading at West Point, at CIA. Japanese business executives are made to read it. We're being misdirected. They're misdirecting the rest of the world. The United States is misdirecting the world and the American public. I mean, it's all about misdirection. You can't really believe what your eyes, are you going to believe your lying eyes or your gut, I guess is what I'm trying to say to you. And my gut tells me that they have a whole hell of a lot more than anyone thinks possible. The BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, the most powerful bank in the world, the central bank, would not have reclassified gold as the only other tier 1 reserve asset if it wasn't for a reason. They don't do things for shits and giggles. They do it because I think they see something in store for gold. And I think gold will be pegged to a new monetary system. I do. And Bitcoin will have its role. But you cannot have something that is that volatile pegged to a monetary system. It doesn't work. You cannot, it has to be stable. And that's what gold represents, is more stability. And it's not only owned by all the central banks, but reclassified as the world's only other tier 1 asset by the BIS. Why didn't they choose Bitcoin? Why didn't they choose special drawing rights? Why didn't they choose something else and choose gold? And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that, along with the massive acquisition and draining of the world's exchanges by the central banks. So, moral of the story, I'm not a Bitcoin basher. Bitcoin probably has a good run in front of it, and maybe a sustained one, maybe much higher than I can even dream. But I would say that this is in no shape or form the end of the gold and silver run. In fact, I would argue this is just probably, you know, the new leg of it.
China announced the discovery of the world's largest known deposit of gold, estimated to be worth over $83 billion, earlier this month. According to an official report, the deposit at the Huanggu goldfield in central China could yield more than 1,000 tons of gold. The report notes that 40 gold veins have been discovered and could have more than 300 tons of gold, with more reserves at deeper layers. Test drills near the site's peripheral areas also suggest that the deposit could be even larger, as the Geological Bureau of Hunan revealed. According to Schectman, this discovery could mean China is getting ready to reveal its actual gold reserves, using the recently discovered gold field to explain why it has so much more gold than reported. It would also mean China now has much more gold to restart the monetary system. In contrast, the Miles Franklin president is less optimistic about the Western economy and systems. He warns that our dominance over the rest of the world is quickly slipping, and we might soon be in for a big surprise. While Schectman is optimistic about the Trump administration, he warns that Trump's monetary policies, such as supporting a weaker dollar and advocating for lower interest rates, could exacerbate inflation and worsen the nation's fiscal crisis. He underscores the importance of strategic financial preparations in response to these potential economic challenges. Let's get back to the interview.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there will look, let's play devil's advocate for a second. And the answer to your question in a nutshell is I'm very optimistic and even more optimistic about the future of this country than I've been in the last 4 years, for sure. I think if we play devil's advocate and there is a deep state that he's challenging, the best way to derail, and to your point, derail this administration and then guarantee a return to the lunacy would be to blow up the system economically, to pull the rug. And, you know, it's interesting when you think about the consolidation, right? The consolidation of the majority of the wealth in this country is in just a few places. You got 7 to 8 trillion in money markets. You have a massive amount in equities that are concentrated into a handful of stocks. And you have this new Bitcoin and crypto craze that it's interesting too. When you talk about the crypto craze, you think about how things maybe aren't as we all understand. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But you look at Tether and you look at USDT and USDC. These are the dollar-based stable coins. There are a few others, but these are the primary ones. And the primary Bitcoin, what is it? It's a complement. It is a pairing, if you will, is Bitcoin USDT. So someone sells their Bitcoin, they go to USDT typically instead of going into US dollars, and it keeps them inside the ecosystem. Well, same thing is true with USDC, which is run by, I think, Goldman Sachs. But if you look at their balance sheets, they're 85% US Treasuries. So by trying to leave the system, as most people are, they're in fact supporting the legacy system by, as the rest of the world is selling US Treasuries, because there is a dollar shortage going on. As crazy as that sounds, there is a global dollar shortage. All of the money that was printed over the last several years, the commercial banks haven't wanted to lend it out into this economy, so they give it back to the Fed, held in a reserve account, making 5%. And so the banks are getting wealthier. They're not risking it, but all of that money never got out, creating massive inflation. Maybe it will at some point. The banks, when they sell the bonds to the Treasury, can use that money in two ways. They can lend it out, or they can give it back to the Fed where it's held in a reserve account. They lend it out in credit cards and mortgages and car loans, and that creates money and creates velocity, but holding it back into and inflation, but holding it back into the Federal Reserve just keeps it kind of locked up. And so you do see countries that are either selling US Treasuries to fund their failing banks because they need the dollars, or selling treasuries because they understand not only have they been very volatile over the last couple of years, but they can be weaponized and inflated. So you have default risk, sanction risk, inflation risk, all of these risks that were never associated with the treasuries now are. And so it's interesting when you see these countries selling treasuries that USDT and USDC are in some ways supporting the legacy system, supporting the debt market. It's interesting. But to your question, am I optimistic? Yeah, I am optimistic. I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful. I hope they don't pull the rug on them, because you talk about a bank collapse or a market collapse. You pull the rug and you have such concentrated forms of wealth in 3 areas, it wouldn't be as difficult as one might think to really create a very big problem. And if that's what the deep state's agenda was to do, Trump and his agenda would be blamed for it. And that would be, I think, the easiest way to derail that administration. But you're right. Hopefully we have 12 years ahead of us of a Republican-led regime that has now become kind of the Democrats of old, where it's the working folk, it's middle America, and the left has gone so far left that I think it's really started to freak some people out. Even people, I don't know if you watch Stephen A. Smith. He's on ESPN a lot. He just went into a massive rant about the Democrats, and you guys blew it. No one wants to listen to you anymore. Get lost, so to speak. So I think even the people on the left. And so my point is simply this, is that you can be socially liberal and fiscally conservative, and yet a guy like me would be painted into the right-wing nut job theory or class. People don't take the time to understand who we really are, and you're either way right-wing or you're left, or said chauvinist or whatever it is for having that view. That's got to go. And we got to go back to where we were. And that's a good place to start. And that's what I'm praying that this administration does. But in terms of hopefulness, yes, I am. But there is no way, as what's his name, the father of Austrian economics, Ludwig von Mises, said, there is no way of avoiding the final collapse of a massive expansion in credit. Now, I didn't say it the way he did, but he basically says if you have a massive expansion of credit, it will be followed by a massive contraction. In other words, a boom and a bust. And that's coming. We have to do that. And when you add all the debt into it, and we're trapped with interest rates, you raise interest rates high enough, you blow up the system, you blow up the banks. You can't really go there. So you look at the rest of the world. If I were the rest of the world and they're saying you have to take dollars or else, well, really? So you can weaponize it, you can inflate it, you can have a massive, ever-increasing debt of fiscal irresponsibility. You can go around the world imposing your will and taking over countries under false pretenses to exploit them. But I have to take your currency. This is going to create some problems as well. It's going to incentivize and crystallize the resolve of the BRICS to continue to build their alternate settlement system. It doesn't mean it's a common BRICS currency. And I agree with James Rickards. That's 10 years away. But not right now. I mean, they have a common settlement system. It's gold. And as James Rickards said the other day, if he was Powell, he would just front run the BRICS nations and buy gold massively. And maybe they will. But I don't think this is anything to be worried about if you own gold and silver. In fact, I think it will be a very bright 4 years for people who hold gold and silver, because inflation is here. It's not going away. It's only going to get worse. And Trump's policies of a weak dollar, of low interest rates, that's a massive loss of purchasing power.
Andy Schectman often highlights the challenges posed by entrenched power structures within the U.S. government, frequently referring to them as the deep state or the military-industrial complex. He describes these entities as a network of unelected bureaucrats, intelligence agencies, and influential corporate interests deeply embedded in the system. According to Schectman, these groups resist policies that threaten their influence or disrupt the status quo, particularly efforts to reduce government spending or alter military and economic agendas. Schectman argues that the military-industrial complex thrives on continuous defense spending and geopolitical tensions. He views Trump's attempts to reduce military engagements, particularly in the Middle East, as a direct challenge to the interests of defense contractors and their lobbying networks. Similarly, he points to the Federal Reserve and other financial institutions as key players in controlling monetary policy, noting that Trump's calls for lower interest rates and a weaker dollar created tensions with these entities. Most importantly, Andy is certain that the next 4 years will be quite beneficial for gold and silver prices, as more and more Americans will become aware of the dire state of the economy and seek shelter in safe haven assets. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Andy Schectman's predictions for the US dollar, gold, and the global economy. Drop your comments, insights, and observations in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.